What is going on, APUSH peeps? We have a great review video for you today. This one is on key people to know from periods 1 through 5. I will go over some of the most important people to know for your exam. You know what time it is? It is shout out time. I have to give shout outs to Ms. Borges' class in Puerto Rico. That is awesome. Ms. Duggan's class in Meridian, Mississippi. Ms. Safstrom's class, Mrs. Moore's class in California, Mr. Armstrong's class at Cerritos High School, Mr. Haynes' class, and also I need to give shout outs to Lily and Lexi Sanam, whose birthday is the day of the exam. How cool is that? You get to show the world how brilliant you are on your birthday. Casey and Susie as well. They're from Mr. King's and Mr. Christopher's classes at Pally High. So thank you all so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and best of luck to you. You will do great. All right, let's take a look at period 1 key people. Definitely know this dude, Juan de Sepulveda. He advocated harsh treatment for Native Americans, and he claimed that slavery for natives was justified under Christianity. Then on the other end, we have Bartolomé de las Casas, who argued that natives deserve the same treatment as other men, and he really helped end the encomienda system in the Spanish colonies. So two dudes you can see, perhaps an excerpt about them or written by them. All right, jumping on over to period 2. In the New England colonies, couple people you have to know. You got John Winthrop. He is the governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony. He had that very famous speech, City Upon a Hill. That sounds to me like a great excerpt question. Know that he was a Puritan and there is little religious toleration. And an example that supports little religious toleration, there's two of them. One is Roger Williams. He was kicked out of Massachusetts and he set up and established Rhode Island, which there was significant religious toleration. And Hutchinson was another person kicked out of Massachusetts. She challenged gender norms and also the clergy in the Puritan church, and she was banished to Rhode Island. So be familiar with those two. In the middle colonies, William Penn, he founded Pennsylvania, and they were religiously and ethnically diverse in the middle colonies, but especially Pennsylvania. All right, the Enlightenment. This time period of questioning tradition, especially government. You got people like John Locke, who wrote about natural rights. That inspired the Declaration of Independence, written mostly by Thomas Jefferson. For the First Great Awakening, you got two dudes, Jonathan Edwards. He started the First Great Awakening, and his famous sermon was Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. So perhaps you could see that as an excerpt. And he had a very famous grandson, Aaron Burr, played by Leslie Odom Jr. in the Hamilton musical. If you have not heard this dude sing, you are missing out. He is incredible. And George Whitefield, he was a great orator of the First Great Awakening. And those are two dudes you should know from that time period. All right, jumping over to period 3, we got Chief Pontiac, who in 1763 was a leader of Pontiac's rebellion. And this is a conflict between natives and the English colonists after the 7 Years' War. And remember, this led to the Proclamation Line of 1763. And this is an example of natives resisting colonial encroachment by the British colonists. Benjamin Franklin, he was the co-author of the Declaration of Independence, and he played an instrumental role in gaining support of France during the Revolutionary War after the Battle of Saratoga. Mercy Otis Warren, she was an influential writer that urged independence. And you also have American colonists from all social classes and backgrounds that argued for independence, whether they were colonial leaders or grassroots movement from the bottom up. People were advocating for independence. Thomas Paine, he is specifically mentioned, as is his book Common Sense, which argued that America should break away from England. Be able to identify and explain common sense in Thomas Paine. Marquis de Lafayette, played by Daveed Diggs in the wonderful Hamilton musical. He was a French dude who became one of Washington's right-hand men and helped out in the Revolutionary War. He also helped get assistance from France. And Abigail Adams was the wife of John Adams, and he hoped that he and others would remember the ladies. She wrote a very famous letter to him saying, "Dear John, please remember the ladies," and he did not. Daniel Shays, he was a Revolutionary War veteran, and he led a rebellion against farm foreclosures and high state taxes in Massachusetts. And this rebellion played an instrumental role in leading to calls for the Constitution because the government under the Articles was too weak to crush the rebellion quickly. John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, when the three of them are together, you know that they wrote the Federalist Papers, and the purpose of that was to gain support for the ratification of the Constitution. Very important to know. George Washington, as we all know, first president, but his farewell address, which is specifically mentioned, that warned of political parties and foreign alliances. Thomas Jefferson, who was the Secretary of State under George Washington, he was the leader of the Jeffersonians, or the Democratic Republicans, the first party system. I do have a video on that. Check it out in the description. And Alexander Hamilton, played by Lin-Manuel, he was the Secretary of Treasury under Washington and leader of the Federalists. Again, that first party system. I could absolutely see a short answer discussing the causes and the effects of the first party system. So know your Federalists, know your Jeffersonians. Okay, jumping over to period 4, we got John Marshall, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court from 1801 to 1834. Wicked important dude. His decisions helped strengthen the federal government over state governments, whether it was Gibbons versus Ogden or McCulloch v. Maryland. You want to know more about the Supreme Court? Guess what? I just did a new video on the Supreme Court and the new curriculum. So no Marbury versus Madison, no Gibbons, no McCulloch. Very important to know all of them, all of which happened under John Marshall. Got my boy Henry Clay. He was the creator of the American system, which is the second bank of the United States, internal improvements or infrastructure like roads, canals, etc., and tariffs to pay for those internal improvements. He was the leader of the Whigs, the second party system, and he was a 3-time compromiser, whether it was the Missouri Compromise of 1820, the Tariff Compromise of 1833, or the Compromise of 1850. And you know it, I got videos on all this stuff listed here. Andrew Jackson, here's an elderly Andrew Jackson. He was the leader of the Democrats, became president, was elected president in 1828. And we see under his administration the elimination of property requirements for white male adults. So universal suffrage for white male adults only. All right, Eli Whitney, you know him, inventor. He invented the cotton gin and the interchangeable parts. 2 very important inventions that drastically changed the history of America. John C. Calhoun, Dracula, he was a senator from South Carolina known as the Great Triumvirate. He was known to argue that slavery was a positive good. So you can see some questions about abolitionists, and then how would somebody who is opposed to the abolitionists respond? And people like John C. Calhoun responded that slavery was a positive good. Be familiar with that. Know Nothing Party, not an individual, but they were an anti-immigrant party, and they were very popular in the 1840s and 1850s. Here's former President Millard Fillmore running for president under the Know Nothing Party with Andrew Jackson's nephew, Andrew Jackson Donaldson. And they sought to limit the immigrants' political power and influence. And this is similar, a synthesis point could be the American Protective Association or the APA of the 1880s. Okay, let's talk about abolitionists. Now, I'm going to highlight only a couple of them. It's important to know that we're literally talking about thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people. These are just some of the more popular ones, but that's not to diminish the role that others played. Denmark Vesey, he planned the largest ever slave rebellion in South Carolina in the 1820s, and this never happened. He was caught before, but he did plan a very large revolt. Nat Turner in 1831 followed through with a slave rebellion in Virginia, killing about 55 to 60 whites. And it's important to know, after every rebellion, you will see more strict slave codes or slave laws enacted. Frederick Douglass, he was this incredible orator and former slave, and he was also a women's rights advocate. He attended the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848. William Lloyd Garrison, the same year as Nat Turner's rebellion in 1831, began the publication of The Liberator, his weekly newspaper. And he called for immediate and uncompensated end to slavery, meaning he wanted slavery to end now, and that slave owners should not get paid to free their slaves. John Brown, you know him for Bleeding Kansas and Harper's Ferry. He and his sons led an attack on the second largest arsenal in the country at Harper's Ferry, ultimately failed. The word did not get out about the rebellion prior to, so nobody came and helped out. But this happened in 1859 and was a contributor to the Civil War. Harriet Tubman, she will soon be on the $20 bill, and you know her as one of the main people from the Underground Railroad, a great symbol for the Underground Railroad. All right, reform movements. Dorothy Dix, know her as she advocated treatment of the mentally ill. Horace Mann, he was all about education. And Elizabeth Cady Stanton, she was one of the organizers of the Seneca Falls Convention. For religion, know Charles G. Finney. He was a part of the Second Great Awakening, which inspired a lot of these reform movements we just talked about. And Brigham Young, he was the leader of the Mormons and moved the Mormons out west to Utah to seek religious refuge. All right, jumping on over to period 5, John L. O'Sullivan. He was a journalist who coined the term manifest destiny. David Wilmot, he authored the Wilmot Proviso, which sought to have all land gained from the Mexican cession be free. That never passed, but that's an example of the controversy over the expansion of slavery out west. There is David Wilmot, congressman from Pennsylvania. Abe Lincoln, he ran on a free soil platform in 1860. That means he favored the non-extension of slavery. Charles Sumner and Thaddeus Stevens, often grouped together, they're radical Republicans that wanted to punish the South after the Civil War. You know Charles Sumner, he is the guy that was beaten with a cane by Preston Brooks in the 1850s. Hiram Revels, during Reconstruction, he was the first African American that was elected to Congress, and that represents new opportunities that many African Americans had in the South as a result of the end of the Civil War and Reconstruction. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. I look forward to see you back here for part 2, which will cover periods 6 through 9. Make sure you check out other review videos in the description, and best of luck to you in May. Never forget you are more than a test score, and certainly please do not forget about Henry Clay. Good luck on your exam. You're brilliant, and you will do great. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.